Okay, it's time. It's 11 a.m. Good morning, everyone. I'll give all you will get this. Don't worry about it. First, who have seen the exam of yourself? Midterm exam of yourself. Who have not seen it? Is that because the link doesn't work or something? It is on the blackboard, submitted as a reply to the learner of homework 1. Okay? So go to homework 1. Once you go to homework 1, you will get the reply, and that reply is a exam. Okay? It's a midterm exam. Scan it for each of you. We double check it. You should not see other people's exam. It's just yourself. Okay? It's just your exam. Okay? Who need the discussion of that exam? Maybe how many? Can you stand up? Please. Who needs TA this afternoon? How many of you? No one? No. Who needs TA? 1. Okay. Who else needs Arya? 2. TA for homework or anything else about this course? Just 2 people? Just 2 people? Just that? Okay, who else need to do some discussion about the exam? The exam is not fair, they didn't grade it correct, they didn't add the score correctly. Yeah, we can do it next Tuesday. So we have just 2 students. For this time, I will tell Arya that okay, once we have 2 students, he can go. Okay, he will be there at 1 p.m. You want 1 p.m.? He come back from lunch break at 1 p.m. He will stay from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. All right. Okay. Today we will have Mr. Bula talk about the water treating and injection. Okay.
One other note on those release forms, be sure and print your name at the top so we can see who signed up and that, so we get the rest of these. Okay, today we want to talk about water. I think people say that if you're in the oil business, really you're in the water business. And for a long time in the oil field, all we did was talk about water as a waste stream, how to get rid of it. So more and more today is this pressure, there's a social pressure, it's called your license to operate. How we handle that water, how we preserve the water is a big part of our business. And everybody just takes this for granted that it's there to drink. And we're really in competition in the oil field with agriculture, with cities and municipalities for the use of this fresh water. So we want to look at a couple things. One will be how do we reuse it, recycle it, or retreat it for either drilling or fracturing purposes, or what do we have to do to treat it for use in water injection. When we talk about water injection, that will be either disposal or for water flooding. So water flooding literally can happen. This is an oil field on the Wabash River in Indiana. Normally you can drive to the wells. In the spring when the floods hit, snow melts, all of the facilities are on 8-foot platforms. To get above, you have to take a boat to get to the facility and to get to each individual well. Each pump jack is set up 8 feet too. So we're not quite that literal on water flooding. Really, to think about water, you need to think about the whole life cycle of it. Where do we take it from the water source to a gathering system, to an injection plant, a distribution system, and finally to the wells. We're going to talk some about well work today as part of this facility to handle water. Water sources have to consider the compatibility of different waters with each other. We also have to look at the volume. Is it sufficient for the needs that we have, or is the volume such that we're going to have to think of other disposal methods. This may sound kind of silly. Water runs downhill. If you have to place a water central gathering system, you'd like to be able to use gravity as much as you can to help you get it there. Study about pumps. If you don't have to put that pump in, just let gravity take it down to the point where you want it. Produced water across lease lines is a bigger and bigger issue that we'll have to face. Your lease normally gives you the right to lay water lines anywhere you want on your lease. Once you get off that lease line, you've got to secure a right of way to take that water any further, or that unit line if the property is unitized. One of the big bills in the legislature right now is the right of eminent domain. And a lot of pipeline companies and even producers have used that, say it's for the public good. I can cross over lines and I can do it with governmental aid. I don't have to have the landowner's permission. And so that's a very sensitive issue with the landowners that we'll be working with. Finally, at the injection plant, there's a number of items that we'll talk about in detail here that are pieces of equipment that are necessary. And just by only having this one lecture on it, we're not going to get into too great a depth on each one of these designs, but to make you aware of it and where you need to look for information. On our distribution system, the corrosion protection, erosion, and linings we'll talk about. And then at the wells, especially, we'll talk about case and tubing annulus integrity, surface pressure limitations, and some other considerations that go downhole. Water quality. What quality do you want this water to be? Very high, right? Do you know how much a gallon you're paying for this? Out of a vending machine is $2 for a pint. Yeah, $12 a gallon. You wouldn't buy gasoline for your car for that, would you? You'd park the car. And so this can barely be a high dollar product if we take it to that step. But first, for injection water quality, anytime we go in the ground with it, quality injection water can be defined this way. It doesn't contain particles large enough to cause any formation damage or plugging. And those particles can be solids, they can be oil, and they can be gas. Those can be considered as damaging particles for a water flow. Our quality water doesn't cause corrosion. Now, there's not a lot of things we can do to water. We can add chemicals to it. Most especially, though, we can consider the trim, the metallurgy, and the linings and coatings that can go into it to keep corrosion from happening. The water that we use would be quality if it doesn't create a scale or other precipitate. With mixed waters, that's always a danger that can come in, taking it from different sources. We don't want any bacteria that can cause corrosion. Bacteria have a way of lying in low spots on pipelines. So if we don't keep that water moving fast enough and get deposits in there, that's a prime breeding spot for bacteria. Their byproducts are corrosive. And finally, it's got to be affordable. If I can't afford it on a per dollar basis to make money out of the project, it doesn't do me any good. This is a slide that was, or not a slide, but this table was taken out of an SPE paper. It's primary characteristics of produced water from 3 Permian shales. And there's some general guidelines that are there. I want you to look, though, at this one. This is the oil and water concentration in facilities discharged. They built a facility, they're getting rid of the water. Notice it went from 10 to 10,000 milligrams per liter. And a quick calculation of this, for a 10,000 barrels a day water stream, that's as much as 3,000 barrels of water per month. At $60 a barrel, in a month's time, we'd recover $180,000 of oil that's in the waste stream. Now, if I'm running a saltwater disposal station and you want to deliver 10,000 barrels a day of water to me, it's got 10,000 parts per million oil in it, bring it on. I'm going to charge you $2 to take your oil, but I'm really going to make money. I'm going to charge you $2 to take your water. I'm really going to make money on that oil I skim. And the Railroad Commission recognizes it. They have a special report that you turn in, skim oil recovered from water stations. So if you don't design the equipment properly, you could be giving away money, disposing of it in the ground. And you can also be damaging your wells with that kind of concerns. Frack water quality. Here's again our Permian typical quality. Notice what the difference is when it takes when we go to look at making frack water with a cross-linked gel fluid as compared to slick water. Cross-linked gels have got to have all of these, make straight lines, has to have all of these products or electrolytes, whatever you want to call them, in certain concentrations for the gel to work. If it's out of those boundaries, the gel doesn't work. So if I'm taking produced water and taking it from this to this quality, I've got a lot of treating to do. Slick water, on the other hand, just need to make sure our pH is all right. We don't have this is basically be a lot of chlorides in it, and our TDS is relatively low. Most of the time, we can get that with filtration. And that's what makes slick water such an attractive part of a frack job, is the ease that we can take produced water and get it down to a frack water quality.
I was going to ask what TDS is.
Total dissolved solids, as opposed to suspended solids. Okay? We're considering multiple water sources nowadays too. This was a one major operator's pipeline system that was being laid in the Permian Basin. They're taking, in effect, produced water. They're taking water from brackish sources, shallow sands that are too salty to be considered fresh. Taking water from city effluent plants. And then they're taking water from freshwater, USDW. Everybody know what that is? Anybody know what that is? U.S. drinking water, aquifer. And so it's one of those designated as a freshwater source of supply. What happens when we mix all those waters together? You stand a chance of forming scale. You can form precipitates other than scale that could be in there. And so all of those different sources of water are being combined together to supply frack water and drilling water for oil field purposes. And we'll talk some more about these systems and how they're put together in a little bit too. Does anybody remember what a stiff diagram is? Did you cover this in fluids? Never seen it before. Okay. A stiff diagram is an easy way to recognize what your water looks like graphically. What you have in the middle is a dividing line to the left are positive ions, to the left are the negative ions. So for example, on the right side here we've got chlorides, carbonates, sulfates, CO3s. Then on the left we've got sodium, calcium, magnesium, iron. Most of those components will be present in most waters. And so if we look at seawater, this one right up here, and the chlorides are right here, that thing really swings heavy on chlorides. And then each produced water has a unique signature. So these diagrams, if you just make a quick plot of the ions that are in it, and you're looking at a water sample, and I say, I wonder if this is coming from a certain reservoir, I can make that signature plot, lay it down and compare it. You know, fresh water would have hardly anything in it there. But the others have unique signatures to them. So if I'm looking at water compatibility, water with the same ion concentrations ought to be compatible, and that's a quick check with some information you can get pretty readily. Also, if you're looking for a casing leak, take a water sample, make a stiff diagram. Does the water look like fresh water, or does it look like my produced water? Give you a hint where things are when you go to troubleshoot. Water treating technologies. You get out there, you're going to work for an operator. There are going to be people knocking on your door saying, I can treat your water, and I can take it down to drinking water quality. I can treat it to whatever specification you want. And that's probably true. Remember, every water doesn't have to be cleaned up to drinking water standards. You can spend a lot of money going to drinking water quality for no good reason. And then produced water, you think, well, I don't have to treat it. It's produced water. It's come out of the formation. I'm just going to inject it right back in, right? Well, it's got some contamination too that it's seen with corrosion inhibitor, emulsion breaker, scale inhibitor. You could have had iron sulfides form. All of those things need to be taken out before we put it back in. Or at least we take out enough based on tests that we're not doing anything harmful to the formation when we re-inject produced water. So just because it came out of there doesn't mean it can go back without any treatment. There's 15 or 20 different technologies that are out there that different people are attempting to use to treat produced water. The chemical engineering department has got a test going on using membranes that probably approach this pressure-driven membranes where when we go on the field trip to Oxy, we're going to see membranes where they're separating CO2 from natural gas. And this principle applies to produced water to take out different elements, just like the gases can be separated on a membrane. The names are, 18 syllables long, the different things that people will try and do. So just remember that some of them really work, some of them are really expensive. You don't need to familiarize yourself with every one of them, but ask some deep questions about what does this technology do, what's it going to cost, what's the drawbacks and limitations to it. System design pressure. How do we know what pressure we're going to need when we go to inject water? What's the maximum pressure? Fracture pressure? Why do you say that? Do what? Oh, yeah, step rate test will tell you what that pressure is. Do we want to be able to fracture the reservoir? So we say that as a good reservoir engineer, I don't want to fracture the reservoir, right? But the minute they don't get injection in, they, being a reservoir engineer, somebody may be a reservoir engineer someday, they're going to come back to you, production engineer, and say, how much pressure can you give me? So we've got to be able to, with on our design basis, to be able to fracture the reservoir, to put up enough pressure. We take into account the hydrostatic pressure, and then we talk about average conditions that we can see. Anybody guess where that picture was taken? How about south of Laredo? It was a freak cold winter in about 1983, and the lines were all laid on the surface. Nothing was insulated. Fact of the matter, we'd just been testing some new pipe that just popped together. It didn't have screwed threads. It just was literally one joint forced in the next one. And when this cold weather hit and stayed for a few days, the ice expanded and the pipe contracted, and we had little spaghetti-length strings, 30-foot joints laying all over the pastures. Big water leaks, but we designed on the average South Texas conditions. So averages can get you in trouble. And I guess it's not nice to talk about Aggies, but they talk about the Aggie down at College Station that had 1 foot in the bucket of ice water and the other foot in the bucket of boiling water. On average, he was comfortable. So we need to know what we're designing for. What kind of conditions might we expect? System design pressure. Here's an example of things we work through. If we have a well at 5,000 feet, we know the fracture gradient, we know the specific gravity of the injection water, it's a little heavier than fresh. And then we've got to make a starting point somewhere on what I want to get to the wellhead with, and we can assume 10% of our average pump charge pressure will be taken up with friction pressure. You guys are learning all sorts of ways to calculate pressure drop in the line, single phase. When we're dealing with water is nice. So what's our pump discharge pressure? First, we've got to calculate the parting pressure. That's just that frac gradient times the depth. We get the benefit of the hydrostatic head, which is just the gravity of the water times their depth times the gradient. Then if we subtract that hydrostatic help, give ourselves a 10% safety factor for this particular condition, all we have to have for pump discharge is 1,045 psi. And we can get to our wellhead with pressure great enough to fracture the formation. Then we go back and refine this as you design your piping, put those numbers in there and see what you got to do to really get there with that. An injection station design is pretty much the same for if we're doing a water flood station or if we're doing a disposal station. This would be a typical water flood station layout. We're going to bring our produced fluids from our tank battery, produced water, through a gas boot. Even though it's water, there will still be some gas entrained in the water generally. Coming into our gas boot, we go into a large produced water tank. And then from the produced water tank, we're going to skim out of it and go to a skim tank for oil. The skim tank can be pumped back to our heater treater. We can resell it. Remember, this is where we're trying to get water down to a quality we're not giving it away, or we're not plugging a formation. Go out of the produced water tank to a pump. Almost always in a water flood installation, you'll see filters. Filtering removes most of the solids out of the produced streams that will need to go into injection wells. And it's always a good idea to have 2 of those because filters will plug. Anybody ever had a swimming pool system they worked on that had filters? What do you have to do to it air soft and keep it working? You have to backwash it. And so if I have the piping such that I can isolate one, backwash the other one, I can stay in business 100% of the time while I'm cycling back and forth between backwash and filtration needs. Many times you will not have the produced water to satisfy your water flooding requirements, so you need a makeup water source. The makeup water source can be injected after we filter, and our makeup water is generally fresher. We can go into a head tank. You're going to have an NPSH on the pump, and the head tank is there to supply it. If we try to pump straight out of the produced water tank, we can have lots of problems doing that. So we need to get over here to a head tank through a filtration system, pump, and then go to the wells. The big difference between a injection station and a produced water station is that a produced water station is another drawing. Where's the drawing?
Just under auto image.
Where's a good old-fashioned rifle?
A gun barrel would be sitting over here. Now the gun barrel we can go to a tank and to a pump. So the gun barrel's there to get that last bit of oil out before we would go in a commercial saltwater disposal. This is a wash tank, which is pretty close to a gun barrel. The only difference, this one is taken from design for cleaning power oil systems. Remember when we talked about artificial lift and use subsurface hydraulic systems? This is the same tank design that would make a very effective water treating tank. Bringing the produced fluid in to a gas boot. This has about a 0.5 foot per second velocity through it. Lets the gas separate, go to the line. Water that's dead now goes in the bottom of the tank and comes up and goes under these spreaders. That distributes the water volume out through the full diameter of the tank. And as this rises, there'd be another skimmer on top of here to take this overflow, and that would be our oil going out to our skim tank. Cone bottom tanks are really ought to be considered for those produced water tanks. You're going to be seeing more solids come in there to make for a lot easier cleaning. Tanks need to have a gas blanket on them for oxygen control. This 0.5 feet per second is a rule of thumb. Engineers can get in trouble using rules of thumb. They can also, they'll get you in the ballpark for design. And then you can do further refining with a lot of the techniques that you're learning in here. And then we want that upward gas flow to be about 2 feet per second. Higher than that, we're going to start carrying some water. Media filters are the most common type in the oil field, and that's just a sand filter. It may have some carbon in it. So that can include sand and gravel or graphite. You're going to have to usually pump through those filters. The head tank won't be sufficient to get it all the way through. You're going to have to pump through the filter, and you're going to have that same pump. You can turn it around and backwash with it. Civils has some design literature that's in your text that you've already been given. And they use a nominal design rate of about 2.5 gallons a minute per square foot of filter area. You wind up with some very large filters on big water flood stations. And to that point, you might be surprised, but not all engineers think alike. The classic example I saw of this was a large company was selling some properties. The company I worked for was going out to buy them. We were doing our due diligence on the ground. We were going, looking at all the equipment, doing our own well test, proving to ourselves that we wanted to buy this. We found a large building. The company took us in there, and it was a brand new filter. That thing was probably 12 feet in diameter, stood about 15 foot tall. It had all the piping up to it. It was brand new, had never been used. All the piping was there, it was set to go. And it turns out that the district office in Midland had been operating the water flood, and the engineers in Fort Worth, where the regional office was, had decided they needed a filter. And so regional office says, you need a filter. I said, okay. They built it, constructed it, hooked it up. Nobody said they had to use it. And it was, we've been getting along fine without this. We built it, everybody's happy. They just never turned it on. So that was about the most extreme case I've ever seen of anything like that, but promise true story. A rapid sand filter, as they're called, just allows a place for a raw water inlet stream to come in, flows down through a bed, and then takes the filter water out to our tanks. And then the backwash is just a reverse of that. Close these valves, bring the water in this way, and then backwash out to the drain. Simple plumbing. And this is from the civils literature on the sizing. Quick sizing on that will give you an approximate idea of how much capacity you need. Injection pumps. Pumps can be positive displacement or centrifugal. We had a couple of lectures on that. Remember, the two big things to consider when we buy a pump is our capital cost and our operating expense. Which one of these types of pumps, PD or centrifugal, for the same water volume would cost the most to operate? Everybody thinks a PD pump would be the most economical regime.
Most economical, or you said which one costs the most to operate?
Yeah. Is there a difference?
You said which one is the most economical and which one is costs the most?
I'm asking you, is there a difference?
Yes.
Okay, why is that?
One that costs the most to operate is the least economical.
Okay, good point. The cost will be different between the two types of pumps. On the operation though, which one's more efficient, PD or centrifugal? PD. So if we have a PD pump like these, how many potential leak points are on a PD pump? This is a big quintuplex. This is like used on frac trucks. This is a triplex, 3 plungers instead of 5. How many leak points are there? A lot, right? How many leak points are on a centrifugal pump? Probably where the inlet and outlet piping connect. How many parts do you have to replace on a PD pump compared to a centrifugal? These are made for easy access. Notice all the bolt caps on top of the cylinders here to get to the suction and discharge valves. The plungers will take wear and tear. We've got a lubricated crankcase back here that has bearings in it that have to be maintained. A centrifugal has some of those same bearings and considerations in it, but a PD pump is generally used, I'd say it's used a lot more than centrifugals are in the water floods, especially in West Texas, because of the pressure requirement. Lower pressure, high volume lends itself to a centrifugal pump. The higher we go up on the pressure, the PD becomes a pump of choice. This is a multi-stage centrifugal pump that was installed a long time ago, and those photographs were taken with Polaroid cameras. Anybody remember Polaroids? Maybe? Okay. This is the motor sitting back here with the pump. Coming into the pump is a suction line from the tank that sits just back here outside the building, goes into the pump. From the pump, back to this picture, it goes through a startup valve. And that startup valve, when the pump starts, is closed. Why do we want to do that?
Back pressure on the pump.
And why?
Starts up there. That's what accurate said. Where'd he go?
Why do we start against the closed valve? Look back at a pump curve on a centrifugal pump. If there's no back pressure, where does the horsepower go? Goes up. It's just infinite. So if we started against a closed valve, we don't overrange our motor. We could start up against a closed valve. As pressure builds up, then this valve starts to open and release pressure to the system. So then our water can go out to our headers for injection, or in this case, come down here, we've got a bypass where we can recirculate water back to the tank, help adjust our total volume coming out of our station that way. Schematically, it looks something like this. We come out of the pump into that first control valve that's going to hold the back pressure. And then once it opens, we go on out to our headers, and then we've got this recycle line that takes it back to the tank. PD pumps take big bases under them to be really vibration free. Most of the vibration, the problems that we see in pumps are due to poor suction conditions. It's got to be big piping, short piping runs, slow velocity to get into that pump. The metallurgy has to be selected to be corrosion resistant, and aluminum bronze is a real common oil field solution for these corrosion conditions. So when we're selecting the pump, we're taking that total capital cost plus operating expense over the life. Distribution lines. How long can a distribution line be? As long as you want to pay for the horsepower here, you can get any volume and pressure you want out to any header and to any given well. So sizing these lines, and I get this question a lot about senior design, is how long can they be? What's reasonable? What is reasonable for a line? So it's a matter of what you get as an economic solution, right? I pay for horsepower here. I pay for pipe size here to help reduce horsepower. And so if I can reduce horsepower enough, I'm putting in large lines. Generally though, we're staying with line pipes that are easier to handle, smaller diameters. We may have to have multiple pumping stations, central plants, to satisfy a large water flow project. But it's very common to come out of the pump, go to header lines that feed smaller laterals, and from the laterals you're going to single injection well points beyond that. The more places you split up the water, the more you got to be concerned about metering. The metering in those volumes, we've got to take our total station discharge, how much are we putting out of the station, how much goes to each header, we need to meter that, and then we need to meter individual well volumes. Why is it necessary to meter the individual well volume? And why is that important?
You want to make sure one well's not taking all your water.
Yeah, in water flooding, you want balance on where we're putting that water in. If a single well is taking large volumes of water, we could be flooding out, we could be going through a thief zone. So that's why it's important to have that individual water well volume. Purchase volumes have to be metered. Produced water volumes in total need to be metered compared to what we're disposing. And then any makeup water that comes in there from whatever source. We skipped one slide. Let's back up a minute. On the injection lines, buried steel lines need to be insulated or wrapped. Anytime we put that bare steel in the ground, it stands a chance for corrosion, especially through caliche. So we go through caliche pad areas, across caliche roads, under caliche roads. That's a particular corrosion problem. Fiberglass pipe is used a lot in these water lines, this GRP, glass reinforced pipe. It has to have a sand pad around the fiberglass. If you just throw the backfill of the ditch right back on top of it, it rocks, trucks drive over it, you punch holes in the fiberglass. Fiberglass pipe, if it's left on the surface, and it's used pretty commonly in water stations, has to be painted. And that's because the UV light from the sun will deteriorate the resins that hold the fibers together, and that pipe will literally peel apart. And then we want to keep a minimum velocity going through those lines to keep them clean, keep things moving. If we have solids, we want to do our best to get them out of the system, but if we can't, let's keep them moving. Don't let them stagnate. Metering we talked about. Every meter ought to have a stringer upstream of it. We don't want liquid to go below the last separation pressure. What does that mean? When we meter.